Indiana lawmakers kicked off the 2024 legislative session on Monday. And what a week it's been already this past week, including, for example, Governor Eric Holcomb delivering his 8th and final State of the State address on Tuesday to the General Assembly. The governor's aspirations for the coming weeks include two key areas that are in common with Republican legislative leadership. They include improving third grade reading literacy and expanding access to child care. By Thursday, all bills for consideration this session were filed, and legislative priorities were announced by Republican and Democratic leaders in the House and Senate. And so tonight on Primetime, members from both chambers are with us to reflect on the opening week and the work ahead at the State House on the coming weeks. And here on Primetime, I'm Bruce Haines. Good evening. With us is 17th District Republican State Senator Andy Zay and 18th District Republican State Representative and Assistant Majority Caucus Chair Dave Abbott. And as always, we invite you to join us with your questions and comments. You can call the number that you see on the screen. As we expand ourselves, there we go. And in the middle is Andy Zay, Senator Zay, and Representative Abbott. Dave? Bruce. Happy New Year, guys.
Good to be with you.
Happy New Year. Good to be with you.
Thank you. Likewise. The short session is certainly never any shorter on the kind of pace of activity. The volume might shift a little bit between the budget sessions of every other year and the one we're involved in now. It wasn't so long ago that House Speaker Todd Huston and Senate President Pro Tem Roderick Bray were saying that maybe we can take a less is more approach in the coming session to maybe see if we can make the short session shorter. After a 7-day test run, what's your sense on what kind of session is this possibly teeing up to be?
Well, I think it'll definitely be shorter, but as you say, the pace will be, pretty busy. It'll happen quickly. It'll happen fast. A number of the committees in the Senate have already met this week. As you suggested in the opening, all the bills are filed. Some of those, I think that was finalized and being sorted out to the committees this week. So the Senate put out their priorities this week, and those have been defined. And those will start making their way through committee. But as we move forward, you can't delay in the committee. It's a hearing, it's a vote, and it's getting it onto the floor. So the pace will be very, very quick. And, I think it's a reflection of what we've done the last 6-8 months. And what I mean by that is we came out of the April session this year. We did not have a technical correction, which we usually do, to go back and do some simple changes to bills that were passed and the statutes that were amended. And in some committees, particularly in education this year, there was no summer education committee. So, it's an opportunity this year to really pick up some pieces that need to be corrected from certainly the last big session, which was a budget session, and fix those and move on, and really for a lot of us get into a political spring.
Yeah, it's going to be a different kind of rhythm, Dave. What's it been like for you this week?
Well, like Andy said, we've dropped all the bills now. We've actually had committee meetings all through the week, starting on, I think it was the second day we even had our first committee meeting. We've got one bill on thirds and 2 on seconds on Tuesday, which is very, very quickly. Usually that first week's kind of loosen up, stretch your muscles, and get ready to go. We hit the ground running. And like Andy said, we've got some bills that are going to be cleanup bills. I'm working on one myself. It's a cleanup bill from a bill last year. There's a number of them like that. And then we got some policy issues that, as long as these are non-fiscal bills, you're going to see a litany of bills that may have cost to them, but they can be absorbed by the agency. Those would not be considered fiscal. But there's a number of them that we're working on that really are follow-up from last year, and then smaller bills. But there are also some good policy bills like education and health and things like that.
As the recipe of legislation for this short session was coming together, Tuesday, as mentioned, it was Governor Holcomb's last joint address at the State House, and being in the room for that, and he brought a few secret ingredients of his own and some ones that are outgrowths of what took place over the past couple of years, particularly in healthcare and the push again toward literacy. What was your sense of what I've been reading as a reflective State of the State address from the governor this year?
Well, I think that's very well stated. I think the governor reflected on his accomplishments, his successes, our successes as a state. It's a good time to be a Hoosier. And what I do think that the administration has done a pretty good job of is diversifying Indiana's economy with what they've done economic development-wise. And we've tried to be supportive with that on the other side of that in enhancing and creating workforce development options. And we get into school with that where you're talking about pathways to graduation. We're talking about career and technical ed. Our students graduate in K through 12 space with certificates and exposing them, preparing them to the workforce and what's next, because we want our graduates of high school to stay home. We want them to be involved and understand what opportunities are available in their communities and available here in Indiana. Because the coming workforce challenges that we face in this economy are huge. It's not, we're competing with the world economy, we're competing, amongst the United States, and it's to keep that talent here and engaged and in our advanced manufacturing amongst so many other things.
Dave, that work-based learning, that's a legislative priority, which
Yes.
comes with an asterisk and a yellow highlighter, I think, on the House side.
Yeah, I hear more from employers in particular that there's a workforce shortage. We have a lack of science, math, critical thinking, and even a lack of showing what's reflective in some of our anxieties and our mental health issues that are in our K through 12 schools, a lack of will to work. So we have to address that in the school system, and that's one of the priorities. I think it's extremely. We can do a lot of economic development, we can create housing, but we really have to look at our schools and the problems within the school, especially with the third grade I-Learn testing. We're testing students when really we should be addressing those needs earlier and provide some pathways for them for tutoring and other ways to keep them and catch them up to the rest of their cohort of students. Those are the things that are going to hold them back from graduating with the skills they need to fill these needs in our community.
Yeah, it seems the literacy piece is something of extreme focus for both chambers as far as priority legislation. When you hear 1 in 5 Hoosier third graders failed the state I-Read test and continue to struggle with foundation skills, or that literacy rates among Indiana's third graders have dropped nearly 10% in the last decade, what's possible in a short session to begin to try to assist educators in moving this needle in a positive direction?
Well, I think we have to be careful. And what I mean by that is I think there's a lot of tools already in the toolbox. So some of that is, as you suggested earlier, putting an asterisk by it, making sure they're utilizing it, possibly channeling funding in that direction to support mentorship, to support summer school, and those types of things. But the data, historical data on third grade literacy is very well known. If we don't get our children reading in the state and really anywhere throughout our country by the third grade, there's a high percentage that they'll end up in our system in one way or another, either in the welfare system or in the correction system. And so we're trying to prevent that in the early ages, and we're trying to be partners and collaborate with our schools to make sure that those tools that they have are being best utilized or can best be utilized in the communities of the schools where they serve.
I was noticing, Dave, that one proposal within Senate Bill 1 and certainly in House Bill 1001 to an extent is the notion of giving the I-Read test to second graders to try to be preemptive, perhaps, as far as who moves forward, who gets held back, and how many, and
exactly
challenging questions.
Exactly. Yes, I appreciate that question. That comment, because we just met with, and I don't know if you were with us, Andy, but there are about 20 superintendents from the Wabash Valley, which included the East in the schools in Fort Wayne and Southwest Allen, and we're used to hearing we need more teachers, or we need higher pay for teachers. A lot of comments more in that direction. Now they're all focused in the I-Learn in particular. And what that does, the challenges that presents to that child. The testing is too late at that point in time. We're gauging that person's progress after we've had time to address it when it was happening earlier. So that I-Learn in second grade, and also childcare and preschool. get them prepared at a quicker time. If we can get childcare either in the workplace or in childcare facilities that are affordable, where parents can actually be home, work with these children, and that's the key. If it doesn't start in the home, then we're going to put that onto the schools, which that's really a difficult task for them. They're understaffed for it. And if we're not doing it until third grade, when we see they're failing, we've failed because we haven't addressed it soon enough.
I know on the Senate side, your colleague Senator Charbonneau says that with regard to child care, this is an infrastructure issue for the state of Indiana because it affects every aspect of our economy.
Yes, it can, and I think the key is not to add any more regulation or any more restriction. It's actually to peel some of that back. And we have a program called On Your Way Pre-K, which is not even being fully utilized. In some parts of the state, they're marketing pretty expansively and still trying to fill those courses. But it's a great opportunity to reach younger kids and get them prepared for school and define some of the issues where we can begin to remediate and begin to bring in mentors and others to advance that so they're prepared for second and third grade iRead test and get them literate.
Yeah. This notion of expanding this, I saw that within the child care measure, it was to your point earlier, Dave, that anything non-fiscal that could still assist with child care would be on the radar for the coming weeks, and that if there is a fiscal component, it moves back in line for consideration, say, 12 months out?
Well, it would be next session. Now that being said, of course, there are fiscals that can be passed this year. I mean, for instance, property taxes, things like that, or local funding. That doesn't open the state budget. So we do have other avenues there at a local level. There's grants, of course, and opportunities like that.
To that point, I think it's one of your pieces of legislation with the idea of looking for tax deduction and credits for persons 65 or older.
Yes.
So you have my attention. Talk to me.
I got my own attention on that. All of us, I think we add up to 180 or so years.
I'm not 65.
Excuse me. Yeah, what I want to do, what we're trying to do is we recognize an ongoing problem for our population 65 and older. For example, they've lived in that house all their life. Their parents lived in it. And you know, they've had a regular job. They're not, you know, these super wealthy people. They're like the common working man that they've lived in a house that they haven't really done a lot of improvements to. But the assessed value of the homes around them have gone up. Their assessed value has gone up tremendously. And likewise, the tax burden, that, even if it didn't change the rate, the assessed value has priced them out of their house. And they're having a hard time just paying the bills. So what we're trying to do is just take some of these existing deductions. They get the over 65 deduction, but there are criteria on how much that house is worth. And right now, currently, it's up to $240,000 is the maximum your house can be worth, and get that $14,000 deduction. Mm-hmm. We looked at a lot of scenarios because if you raise it too high, then you have such a tax shift by the over 65 getting that benefit from the higher deduction. And also there's cap loss too. If too much of the tax, in other words, if you're giving too much of a break to everybody, a select group, someone's got to make that up because you have a levy that has to be met by this county. Mm-hmm. And so you have to be really careful how many tax dollars you shift and how many people you push over their 1% cap for a homestead. And what that basically means is that's dollars that don't go back to the county, they don't get shifted. That's tax loss. But we want to help these people. And we're trying to do it in a very small way, raise it to $350,000, increase the income from $40,000 for a married couple, for instance, to $50,000, just to keep up with inflation. There is an automatic escalator on the income. It goes back off the Social Security COLA. But in addition to that, we think we need to jump ahead a little bit to $350,000 at least. And next year, we're going to be addressing taxes as a whole. But for now, this would give them a break. Mm-hmm. And then we'll look at it in a bigger scope next year.
Under the topic of taxes, a gentleman here has a bill that has been receiving powerful attention, and that's Senate Bill 98, the idea of a dependent child exemption.
Yes.
But I'll have you take it from there.
Okay. Well, we're a state for life. We spent a lot of time a summer ago, legislating that and standing up for life here in Indiana. And the question on the other side of that is how are we supporting pregnant mothers and how are we supporting kids once they are born and families. And so for me, this kind of seemed like a natural deduction that we could add to our tax code, where if a woman is pregnant, they would get credit for that tax or for that child if it carried over the year. So if you were pregnant in 2023 and the baby was born in 2024, you could actually claim that child as a deduction. And I think it's twofold. It's certainly giving a deduction to that family as they begin to start that family with a new child. And the second thing is we talk about infant mortality in the state of Indiana. And a big part of infant mortality is pregnant mothers engaging with their doctors or OBGYNs early. And so this encourages that and incentivizes that to get our mothers in connection with doctors so they can begin some prenatal care. They can have the radiological services to see the health of that baby and nurture it as they work towards birth. So I would hope that it can do two things in that regard. The challenge, of course, is this year there is a fiscal on it that probably will not allow it to fulfill and go completely through the process. But we do have a hearing this week, and I'm excited about sharing the idea with the Tax and Fiscal Committee in the Senate, and we have some folks coming in to testify. And it's a pretty unique idea that's been only shared or been done in two other states. Georgia and Wisconsin are both looking at it. And so I look forward to having the hearing this year and see what can possibly be done with it next year. There's some wrinkles to work out and some details that still need to be figured out with legislation. But conceptually, and being a state for life, I think we need to celebrate that and support that from its infancy at conception to birth and beyond.
We are talking this evening with State Senator Andy Zay and also with State Representative Dave Abbott here on Primetime. If you'd like to join us, you see the number on the screen. Please feel free to call and share a question or comment with the gentleman. Both Andy and Dave and several others bringing attention within the last couple of months to something that's been going on for multiple years. And I feel like a lot of us were catching up on the cause of a road we've traveled frequently in Indiana, that's US 30, and the notion that its time has come to move from a highway to a freeway. And we're all having to go back to school to find out what the difference is, because sometimes we use those words interchangeably. Yeah. But Dave, let me start with you, because you have a piece of legislation here as well regarding annexation, which also seems to speak powerfully to the idea of part of that annexation including roads, in addition to towns. So let's start there. The US 30's in the spotlight. What are we trying to fix?
Well, it's the traffic congestion and the safety, I think, is the big one. There's a lot of heavy truck traffic. You've got SDI, BF Goodrich, you've got Zimmer Biomet, the medical community. There's a lot, and now we have Amazon. So we've seen with the traffic lights, the congestion, especially around the Columbia City, Warsaw area, that has caused a situation where not only are the businesses concerned about the time travel, and that's lost dollars to them, and this has been going on for years and years, and it's building more and more as we grow. We're getting to a point now where corporations have told us that we're not going to continue to grow unless we improve this highway. This system going to Chicago in particular, it's not feasible for them to go to the toll road, clear up 69. They want to make that short. That's dollars, and that's truck dollars and gas and time and everything else. So it's time. It's time that we take this and turn it into, I would call, kind of a limited interstate, because you're still going to have access roads, you're going to have clover leaves. But as you go through some of the towns, like say Columbia City, Warsaw in particular, bypassing those is a big challenge. So that's one of the things that is really a talking point now with the Propel 30, with NDOT when they're laying out this study, how we're going to do this, is how to facilitate these changes to make it happen. And of course, keep safety as number one concern.
Yeah, I mean, even going through Huntington County on 24, even the idea of going from 2 to 4 lanes has made a world of difference.
No, it is. It's the idea spawns a little bit, I think, mainly from economic development. And we've obviously had a huge investment in economic development in the last 8 to 10 years, where we've seen some of our industries grow, and the investments that we've partnered with our industries to keep them here. But a huge part of that is logistics, whether it's getting them the parts or delivering their parts to the marketplace. And a challenge many years ago that was completed with the Heartland Corridor was, of course, getting 24 from Lafayette to Toledo, 4-lane all the way. And we have that with 30, but it's really become a safety concern as much as it has an economic development concern. Along the corridor of 30, there's been multiple incidents over the last few years where we've actually had semis hitting semis, whether it's anticipation or a lack of anticipation heading in and out of those stoplights. And so, there are things there that really need to be corrected. If we can limit some of those intersections, it'll be safer both for the casual traveler, the work traveler, and the business travel. And those are things that we need to look at, and things we particularly need to look at here in Northeast Indiana, because we need to make sure we're getting our fair share of funding, not only from the federal government, but also from Indianapolis, and getting those dollars invested up here in our community. And it's been a priority of our whole delegation up here to continue to emphasize that and begin the process of environmental studies, engineering studies, and begin to lay that out. And my hope is that we can begin to pick off some of these intersections, because it's going to take a 10 or 20-year project and a lot of money to do it. But if we can hit some of those troubling intersections, I think as people navigate Highway 30, if that's what we're going to call it, Freeway 30, that they will begin to see the benefits of that infrastructure improvement. So I think that's what we're all hopeful for, and we can make it certainly important for economic development, but even more importantly, safe.
Even as it's a short session, it's even a shorter prime time. We're down to the last couple of minutes, but let me give each of you at least a minute to say that in the weeks to come, what other legislative subject area or a bill that you're proposing are you looking forward to following? And Dave, let me start with you.
Okay, I promise I'll keep this short. I'm very passionate about this. Back in 2018-19, in all goodwill, the state of Indiana, the DNR in particular, remapped the entire state. They did it with LiDAR from the ARIS laser, and then they also did it from the ground, and they did modeling to determine where the floodplains are, because about a third of our state's covered by FEMA floodplains, and that's data that's used to decide whether or not you need floodplain insurance if you're participating in a program. So if you're buying a house, you have a mortgage, you're in a floodplain, you have to have the insurance. They remapped it. Unfortunately, there has been in the last couple sessions some efforts we've done legislatively to correct where a house has been put into a floodplain where it was not in a floodplain. And that's complicated to get into, that's why I keep this short. What my bill is going to do is slow this whole process down of adopting these maps until we've had time to allow the property owner to appeal at no cost, to have the DNR come back out and remeasure some of these areas, get them right. We don't want to lose millions of dollars, and we've had examples where some businesses were going to expand. They found out they were in a floodplain that they were not in, really. And once they re-challenged that data and had it fixed, that kept their business in this state that was going to move out of the state because they were drawn into a floodplain that didn't exist. So we want good floodplains, we just want them right.
There you go.
So.
And Andy, how about you, sir?
Some technical corrections. I've spent some time working with the Indiana Geological and Water Survey, which does the mapping for the state and some things like that. So we're working on some continuing education credits for that licensure. And then I continue to be focused on parental rights and making sure that the parents are engaged in our kids' health care, both with their doctors and in the school environment. As we talk about school-based health clinics becoming more prolific throughout the state and the country, we need to make sure that parents are signing off and approving that, whether it's physical health or mental health. And so I have a piece of legislation I carried last year, I filed again this year to keep parents in tune with that. But it's Indiana's a great place to live, and it's a great time to live here. We have challenges, and we're ready to face them. And we've done a lot of that good work prior to this session, so hopefully this year will be a lot of technical corrections. We can get in and out of Indianapolis and get on with the state, running the state.
Yeah. And I'd be remiss if we didn't at least recognize that you have filed for candidacy for Congress.
Thank you.
Maybe a comment or two on that in 30 seconds or less.
Well, it's been an honor to serve District 17 in the 4 counties that I've served over my 8 years. And Jim Banks has served us very well here in Northeast Indiana. As he moves up for the Senate seat, we need to make sure we have somebody that's familiar with legislative work, that's familiar with constituent services, and I hope I can take my efforts and my legislative ability forward to the U.S. Congress, and we've been working very hard to do that. And now we got to double down and do everything we've done the last 10 months and 4 months and twice as much. So it's going to be a sprint now.
And the way the short session goes, it'll be objects in the mirror are always closer than they appear.
Absolutely.
So
true.
Best wishes for the weeks ahead to you both in your activity, and we'll be following progress with the session right here Friday nights at 7:30. Our guests this week: 17th District Republican State Senator Andy Zay, 18th District Republican State Representative and Assistant Majority Caucus Chair Dave Abbott. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much. And next week, we will have House leadership in the House. We will have House Majority Floor Leader Matt Lehman and House Democratic Leader Phil Giaquinta joining us right here on set, and we hope you'll be with us as well. I'm Bruce Haines for all of us with Primetime. Thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you then. Good night. The preceding program on PBS Fort Wayne was made possible in part by
Businesses constantly evolve. The Rogers Company started as Rogers Markets in 1944. Today, the Rogers Company is commercial property and real estate development and a proud supporter of PBS Fort Wayne. The Regional Chamber of Northeast Indiana advocates for world-class infrastructure, a competitive business climate, 21st century talent, and rural investment. One region, one voice. NEINadvocates.com.